Very pleased now to be joined by the one, the only, the legendary, the incomparable, the astute, incredibly handsome, internationally famous. I say that all the time when I bring on a guest, but it is actually literally true here today. You know him, you love him from ESPN Australia. I don't know that I can have a big enough introduction for him. My very good friend, Laurie Horesh. Laurie, thank you so much for joining us this week.
If your goal is to get me blushing within 5 seconds, it's happened. Internationally famous is absolute fabrication. Internationally giving it a crack, giving it a go would be how I'd phrase it. But very happy to be joining today. We're old friends, RJ. This we go way back. You were part of the infamous crew that, I'm not going to use the B word, but you forcibly encouraged me over social media platforms to get my keister over to the United States for a draft party way back when in 2016. And that birthed a few beautiful friendships with yourself and several of your colleagues over there. And what better way to spend my Thursday early morning and Wednesday evening, afternoon over there than yakking it up with you, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, so you and I met formally in person now 7 years ago. We also have hung out a few different times since then in person. Mostly at Super Bowls, obviously, for the work you do, your full-time jobs. That's been kind of cool. I don't know that I've ever told you what I'm about to tell you. You were the first person I ever knew. And it was at that draft party. It was the Maverick Bar that we were at in 2016, right, for the first round when the Cowboys took Zeke Elliott. So kind of a perfect full circle time, I guess, with where we're at. But we were at that party, at that event. Everybody was just kind of hanging out and enjoying things. And you on your phone had push alerts for Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport, like for their tweets. And I was just getting started in the blog game at that point in time. And I remember thinking, like, that's excessive. I remember thinking, like, I can't imagine what that would be like, only for my life to become push alert, like, pandemonium, crazy chaos, whatever. But so you inspired me. I think about that anytime I get a push alert from any one of the NFL insiders.
Oh, well, it's so sweet to know that you're thinking about me so frequently. I mean, it's kind of necessary, and also probably even worse having the push alert set up being in Australia and with the time zone that we have. My dear and loving and very patient and tolerant wife has to gently remind me to leave my phone on the carpeted floor of our bedroom, not on the wooden bedside table, because during the night when this stuff is buzzing, as like right now, right, we're in pre-free agency tampering. Sorry, the legal tampering window, whatever we're calling it these days, is a couple days away. So through the night, that thing will be buzzing off as the Adam Schefters of the world and the rap sheets of the world and the Grazianos and the Fowlers of the world, Pelliceros of the world, the RJ Ochoas of the world, the Bobby Belts of the world, are firing off news throughout the night. And yeah, it's a wake up in the morning, and as a parent now, you wake up in more of a daze than you used to in your fresher, younger days, like when we met back in 2016 formally for the first time. But it's kind of my scroll is to check what's going on. And look, I'll fully own up to it as well for things like free agency opening, for things like the tampering window opening the night before the draft, a couple of nights before the draft. I'll be up at some stupid hours because the buzz will go, I'll hear it. It'll be electric news. I don't know if it'll be Odell Beckham size news this time around or not, but it'll be that type of buzz, and it's very hard to go back to sleep at that point. So that's when I get my friend and co-host from the NFL Brekkie show, Phil Murphy, just messaging me. He's like, "Go to bed. You have a family."
Well, that's good advice. And it's funny that we kind of started off at this. So just so everyone is fully aware, it's what, 8 a.m., 8:21 a.m. Is that correct for you right now?
You got it.
It's 8:21 in real time. So this episode drops on Thursdays in the States. So it's 3:21 p.m. Central Standard Time for me specifically. And I just saw a tweet right now from Jeremy Fowler, who you named among the NFL insiders. So this is just perfect. And I actually, so that everyone is fully aware, I generally do this because I'm lazy, but I didn't prep Laurie for anything. I didn't give it. Yeah, he asked me several times and said, we're just going to talk. To figure this out. So shout out to Jeremy Fowler for helping us out. Have you seen the Jeremy Fowler tweet yet, Laurie?
I have it right in front. Do you want to read it out, or shall I?
I think you should. You have the better voice,
with the accent completely foreign to Cowboys chat. Jeremy Fowler. From ESPN, obviously. The Cowboys are working on a resolution to bring 8-time Pro Bowler Tyron Smith back for a 13th season, which could include a reworked contract per sources. Smith is due $13.6 million in the final year of his deal.
How do we feel about this?
I think it's I think it was somewhat inevitable after the comments we've heard in recent weeks, particularly, Cowboys brass, coaching staff being made available, around the combine. We'd heard that, if you are listening, on the daily, it's Cowboys radio, Cowboys podcast, the buzz was that was their plan, that they had every intention. The Joneses had every intention of expecting Tyron Smith back. That was the plan. I think, the hyphenated word progress stopper is going to be thrown around, given you want to see Tyler Smith getting more and more exposure at left tackle. But look, good offensive line help is hard to come by in this league. You talk about teams are always searching for good defensive back help. Dallas Cowboys included this offseason. And they're also looking for offensive line stocks. How that works out, is Tyron Smith being reworked? Is he someone that they're going to look, depending how Terrence Steele comes back, how quickly that happens, would they look at him again over at the right side of the offensive line? I don't think that was a raging success at the end of the last season. Or, is that the plan, that he's just going to be lock and load there at left tackle while he's healthy, and Tyler Smith is going to again be operating there at left guard? It gives you, I guess, flexibility. It gives you options. It gives the Dallas Cowboys options on that offensive line. But they're talking about a rework deal. If you're spending time, as we all do at this time of year, you're on things like over the cap on salary cap calculator. That Tyron Smith number right at the top there, as we're talking about getting the Cowboys under the cap figure. I know some of the numbers came in about some extra money that different teams got, because of contract things that are worked out in the previous financial year that now flow into 2023, and they got a couple extra $1 million of help, but they still have work to do to get some room to operate in this month. For Tyron Smith, that big old number was staring at you. Is this something we can just wipe off the books and get as much help as we need? They're going to need. I would like to see them bring that number down. All respect to Tyron Smith, but I would like to see that number come down for what he's shown from a health standpoint, as well as a slight dip in play standpoint the last couple of years.
I think that, they recognize, I think Tyron recognizes kind of everything that is at play here, all the variables. I know people have floated out his name in recent years as like a trade or a cut candidate just because of the high, figure. He's missed a lot of time. He's made a lot of money. It just doesn't make sense. And I understand the progress stopper point that you brought up. And I think we get to be in such a rush where we're like, well, Tyler Smith has to be the left tackle of the future now. Like, the future's here. It's like, well, why? Like, and if Tyron Smith is not a part of the Cowboys this season, they have a huge problem, right? Because if he's not, then okay, cool. Tyler Smith's playing left tackle. Who's your left guard? If are you going to overpay for Connor McGovern? Because it feels like there aren't a lot of interior linemen in free agency, so Connor McGovern might get, a little bit of a nice deal. I don't think either of us think they're going to bring him back. They let Connor Williams walk, and he was a better player. But so, maybe that lends to Connor McGovern returning. But if left or right, you're telling me the plan is finally Tyron Smith, Tyler Biadasz, Zach Martin, Terrence Steele, like, that's difficult to be upset with. That was literally the plan.
That's a power five right there. I think I would rather, if Tyron Smith's feeling healthy, and we know how committed he is to the club, an amazing don't want to use the S word here, but an amazing bastion for professionalism and for a high level performance for this club, for this franchise, and someone who's original, when it came out, the 10-year deal, the tacked on deal to his original rookie contract, $98 million, I think was the original figure. Raised eyebrows. I think it was a phenomenal bit of business from the Cowboys. And I think, but it points to longevity and how much service he's given at an incredibly physically demanding position. Tyron Smith has been the stuff of legend. Yes, there's the All Pros and the Pro Bowls and the nominations over the years and the amazing grades, but the fact that he's been wearing a knee brace as an elbow brace for how many years now just took points to the rare athlete that he is. There's flashes, not to get over objectifying here, but there's, you see these Cowboys, the sounds from the sideline videos and the locker room videos that, the Cowboys push out there, and you see in the locker room there. This guy's in his 30s. He's playing well above 300 pounds and has been for a while, and he's still got Peter Andre abs. I can tell you that I never had Peter Andre abs, but I can tell you my closest days to that are not right now. This is someone that, look, if he's healthy and that fire is burning for him to come back, then if you can get a strong five out there, there are going to be the Tyler Smith flag wavers that want to see him at left tackle day one of, forget about day one of the season, day one training camp, day one of mini camp, OTAs, day one of, in the coffee line there over in Frisco. But I think ultimately, look, that's a strong 5 you're bringing back. You want to add some depth behind there because health hasn't been a thing that you can depend on with Tyron Smith. But additionally, it was not this past season, but I think in recent seasons, I think a season ago, taking back to 2021, all years meld together since the pandemic. But 2021, when he did have a healthy stretch to start the season, it was quietly the return of a dominant Tyron Smith. If we can see that again, he's going to do everything he can to take care of his body. If we see that again, then this is a plus for the Cowboys. Ideally, for me, that number just comes down a little bit.
It's strange because it feels like he's been around forever. Do you know how old he is? I'm sure you do, but I don't know that the average person does, honestly.
Off the top of my head, I've always remembered that he's a couple years younger than me, so I'm going to guess that Tyron right now is 32 years old.
Well, that's a dumb way of remembering it, but you're right. I always remember that he was 20 years old when he was drafted, and his birthday is in December. So I remember thinking, like, for most of his rookie season, like, he goes out with his teammates, like, he can't have a drink, right? Like, he can't, like, legally, they go to a steakhouse, they do their thing or whatever, like, couldn't legally do it. But so he's 32 years old. This is his age 33 season, and so, like, again, I'm not saying he's a young spring chicken or whatever the case may be, but, like, he's not old. You know what I mean? Like, we do kind of lose track inside of that. Like, again, I recognize that's really old in the NFL, but I mean, like, Jason Peters is 8 years older than him right now. You know what I mean? Like, it really does kind of contextualize things for you. Do you know, Laurie, you mentioned all years since the pandemic kind of blend together. We'll look at those 3 seasons. Do you know how many games Tyron Smith has played since 2020?
Oh, you're so rude putting me on the spot like that. Since 2000, so including 20, 21, 22 seasons, those
Correct.
3 seasons. It wasn't many this past season. I'm going to say he's played 20 games in the past 3 seasons.
Not even 17 regular season games, to be fair.
There we go.
There are 2 or 3 playoff games, I guess. So technically, it would be 20 if you count the playoff games.
Well, so technically, I was. What's the word?
That's true. That's true. You are correct. But so,
thank you.
You mentioned he did kind of have like a health resurgence there. He played 13 games every year, 4 years in a row, from 16 through 19. Then played the first 2 games of 20. And everything kind of fell apart. Or I don't think it was. I think he played 1 and then missed 1, and then played the 3rd, and then it was done for the year. But so, not a lot of wear and tear on those tires as of late. You know what I mean? Like, and so if you're trying to be optimistic, you're trying to spin it that way. But for me, I don't even have to like reach that deep down into the like barrel of positivity. I mean, this is a good thing. Your offensive line is set. You have a lot of problems to address and to fix. Like, so why let Tyron Smith walk and create one along the offensive line? And so that, I guess, leads me to cool, awesome. This Tyron Smith thing is happening. Shout out to Jeremy Fowler giving us a little bit of breaking news while we're recording. What is the biggest thing? I said we were just going to ramble, kind of kick the can around. Like, what's giving you the most stress? What's causing you the most anxiety right now with regards to the Cowboys? Something that you think will or won't happen?
I'm petrified.
So you're going anxiety as opposed to like a positive thing. You're something that is giving you anxiety. Interesting.
In the era that we're in with the NFL, the era that we're in with teams that know they're contending, stacking chips and adding to strengths, it's adding more offensive firepower. The changeover at play calling, Mike McCarthy coming in, the talk about West Coast system, which, without dumbing it down and being overly reductive for what Mike McCarthy, who knows far more about football, has forgotten more about football than I'll ever know, particularly when it comes to schematics and laying out an offensive game plan. But the idea that this is a shorter, passing scheme. This is looking to the kind of short intermediate parts of the field, putting the ball in your playmakers' hands, letting them in space and let them get to work after the catch. There's not a lot. Tony Pollard coming back on the franchise tag, CeeDee Lamb. That's where it ends. And Odell Beckham, the most commonly dropped name, would fit that. A healthy and still ideally explosive Odell Beckham. I mean, we used to make fun of the Giants for the play calls that are always just saying, hit Odell on a slant, let him do 60 yards after the catch. But putting him in space to get to work with if he's, depending how that recovery has gone, and you hope the recovery has gone swimmingly and he's back to full fitness, his ability to fit into something like that would be a positive and would alleviate some of that anxiety. But you're looking at things like EPA per target in this past season, and there is a massive drop-off after CeeDee Lamb and after EPA per target and total EPA generated on targets. You look after Pollard and CeeDee Lamb, and it is a
cliff dive.
Oh, yeah. And that's kind of the reason that with people talking about Dalton Schultz and tagging him and, he's a security blanket. Dak's familiar with him. those are true. And those relationships can also be added to other players. They can be fostered and forged in the offseason because Dalton Schultz, whilst he was occasionally sneakily slippery, he's a clever football player. He knew where the first down marker is for sure. This was not someone who was adding a whole lot of extra to those targets after the fact. Situationally, I think there was more value in how he played than that kind of true seam stretch of the game breaker at that tight end position. So if they're going to invest there, I'd rather see that come in the in first couple of rounds of the draft. It's a deep class. It's certainly in the conversation at 26, but then you get into the
you're fine with the tight end at 26 then.
I'm certainly open to it. I think.
Oh no, see, I have pure and total anxiety.
What's aching me more at 26? I think if the cornerback that you're after, if I think a name that has been thrown around a lot, a Deonte Banks type, who I've just been watching some of his stuff over the last few nights, watching some of his tape and looking at how he's graded out. I think that speaks incredibly interestingly to me, a very physically gifted and physical corner with catch-up speed, to where Anthony Brown, that Anthony Brown era could be over. And he was someone who tested and had that kind of 4.3 speed, mid 4.3s. That's something that Deonte Banks steps right in at a really nice size there, tickling over, the 6 foot mark and up near 200 pounds. I think that would be my on paper from writing it down today, the same way that I was writing down years ago that, boy, I'd love to see the Cowboys line Byron Jones in the 20s, way back when. That would be a name, or that'd be a position I'd love to see them address at that point. But if you're in love with Maya gets a lot of talk, if you're in love with a Dalton Kincaid, if you've fallen in love with the idea of a 6 offensive lineman out of Georgia that can also play as a tight end, I completely open to that, because I think you need to be stacking some chips on that offense to give Dak Prescott, to give Mike McCarthy the chance that we want to see. This is we're talking chips. This is an all-in year for Mike McCarthy. He's put that offense all on him. Dan Quinn's taking the other side of the ball. If these things fails, we know we're going to likely be heading towards another regime change and a big move there. I'd rather see them or need to see them, whether that's through a trade, through free agency, or then in the draft, just add that number 2 aerial weapon to take this thing to a professional level.
So I have a lot to respond and kind of vomit at you. So put on the goggles. But so I wrote about this actually today, the day we're recording, when I at the site at Belong with the Boys, about how the idea of a tight end at 26, for lack of a better word, is dumb. And to be fair, I hate generalizations like what I'm like the point that I'm making. I hate blanket, you can't take a tight end at 26. Well, why? What's the context? You know what I mean? The context is necessary, but generally speaking, I'm against it. So I wrote this, like I said, I looked, at True Media's sample size of data, which goes all the way back to 2000. So since 2000, do you know how many rookie tight ends have eclipsed 1,000 yards in a season? Their rookie season specifically.
Since 2000?
Since 2000. I've obviously, made this kind of like the trivia episode, just kind of throwing things at you.
I want to throw Kyle Pitts' name in there.
He's one.
And there's not a lot of others. My NFL knowledge goes more back to around 2008, 2009. So if it's before then I'm sorry. I don't know what draft class Vernon Davis was in. But yeah, I know that Kyle Pitts registers, but yeah, I think your point, and I'm interested to hear the number, but yeah, that first round production at the tight end position compared to what you get throughout the rest of career from guys picked in the second, third round in particular, and even into day 3 is a pretty, it's a harrowing tale.
So this isn't even just first round tight ends. This is all rookie tight ends, and looking at their rookie season specifically. But I mean, you mentioned it. This is kind of an important year. So this would be whatever player we're talking about's rookie season. There is only a single 1,000-yard season from a rookie tight end, and it belongs to Kyle Pitts just 2 years ago. Not only did he, he had 1,026 yards, so good for him. He only had 1 touchdown. So that was kind of the thing, obviously. And we talked about this on our roundtable this week, but didn't do a lot of damage offensively. Had the yards, cool. The second most belonged to Jeremy Shockey in 2002. The third most to Jordan Matthews in 2014. Evan Ingram in 2017, he had 722. But Vernon Davis isn't even the highest ranking rookie 49ers tight end. George Kittle as a rookie had 515 receiving yards. So it's tough. The most touchdowns, I was just kind of playing over with this, most touchdowns ever caught by a rookie Cowboys tight end since 2000 belonged to Martellus Bennett with 4. And the second, so I know I'm adding a lot of qualifiers, but so if we're looking at rookie Dallas Cowboys tight ends, Martellus Bennett has the most in his rookie season with 4. The second most is a 3-way tie belonging to Gavin Escobar in 2013, and the other 2 players tied with Gavin, Jake Ferguson and Peyton Hendershot last year, with 2 apiece. So, I mean, it's a hard thing to talk myself into. That's why, like, I don't want anything. I don't want to try to be the exception. You know what I'm saying? Like, in such an important year.
And I think with tight ends, like you look at the Travis Kelce's of the world, you look at the George Kittles of the world, you look at Rob Gronkowski going back a little bit further, and these aren't first round picks. These aren't players that you did spend that top draft capital on. I think the way looking at it with this class, and particularly contrasting it to the wide receiver class, both in free agency, out and out free agents, forget draft targets for a sec, but out and out free agents and the draft class, I'm looking for a difference making playmaker, and that's where I think Mayer is going to be sitting on a lot of people at the top of the tight end rankings for a lot of draft experts, a lot of draft analysts. But he didn't test an amazing game breaker. If I'm going there, I might be falling into, a bit of a Tracy trap here. I want someone who's been productive, but I want someone whose film and whose testing shows that they can be kind of a matchup difference maker at the next level. So I was watching I was watching Dalton Kincaid, and you see that as a out-and-out receiving weapon. No, you're not going to get much blocking from him. That's fine. We just talked about the Power 5 offensive lineman that we brought back. That strong starting 5. But I would like to see a Dalton Kincaid type. I know there's been some other phenomenal testers. I mean, or do you just go back to the Iowa well, right? All Iowa does is push out tight end. I mean, we've got Sam Laporta in this class as well. He tested phenomenally, had a great workout there at the at the draft combine. So, do you truly believe this is an outlier tight end class, and that compared to the wide receiver class that's come out in this rookie, in this rookie crop, that's where your true offensive difference maker in the passing game is going to be? Or do you look at history and go, history is telling us the game breakers that we want, the A1 tight end weapons that we want, aren't coming on day one?
I see, like, that's where, like, the context matters. Like, are you telling me that the Cowboys are taking Dalton Kincaid over, I don't know, Jackson Smith and over Jordan Addison, right? Again, the context matters. And so, like, I don't want to get too lost in the weeds, but
and Jackson Smith and Jigba he's a fascinating one, because that's a slot only player. Like, that is you watch him, that is where he's lining up, or he's lining up in the backfield. And all you hear out of Frisco, I know you don't care, but all you hear out of Frisco, out of the Star, is we don't want slot only players. They like receivers that can line up in a couple of different spots. And CeeDee Lamb is amazingly productive out of there. And this is a guy, I think I saw some comparisons that, is Jackson Smith and Jigba just going to be, is he just going to be Jarvis Landry? He tested way better than Jarvis Landry. His tape is more enjoyable, there's more downfield. There are downfield plays compared to what we've seen from Jarvis Landry over his career. 5 yards a reception, or 5 yards, 5 air yards reception, whatever it was throughout his prime of his career, when he's 110 receptions on the year and barely cracking 1,000 yards. But you look at someone, I think he could be someone, he could be someone's Cooper Kupp. The way he's lined up in the backfield, the way the route running, the lateral quickness, saw the 3-cone, the short shuttle, he could be someone's Cooper Kupp. Is that something that this Cowboys front office coaching staff has as an idealized, archetype or body type that they're going to go after as play style? Is that something they value, or do they want that versatility to win outside and inside?
I want to switch subjects very abruptly. Just, I was telling you actually right before we started recording, you brought up Full Swing, the Netflix documentary on the PGA Tour. And I said that I really want to start Drive to Survive. I haven't watched it. It's on the list. I've been talking to Michael Kist at SB Nation about it. And I went as far as following F1 on social media. Like, so now I'm like an F1 fan. I followed him on Twitter, followed him on Instagram. So now my algorithm's all compromised. So that's just kind of where I'm at. But so I'm in a hard pivot, like I imagine they do in an F1 race. That was my horrible segue. But anyway, you brought up Dak when I asked you about the things that you were anxious about, et cetera, et cetera. And I do think that this was overblown. But in the lead up to the Super Bowl, when there was the comment he made to the local media, and it was detailed that he was like walking away. I know you read the report too. And he was like, yeah, I don't want to paraphrase and get it wrong, but he said, like, I wasn't pleased, or I wasn't happy, or like, he just was like, yeah, he's my guy. Like, he said it just like generally, like, I was bummed or was upset or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Obviously he has since said that, like, he trusts Mike, he trusts Biden, Schottenheimer, et cetera, et cetera. But there are a lot of people who I think had the take. They were like, Kellen's his guy. He's been his guy. Was his teammate, obviously, from day one. He's known him from day one, et cetera, et cetera. So, like, why are you doing this? Why are you shuffling the deck like this? And I've thought about this for a few weeks now, and this is my take. I'm kind of happy about this. Like, I'm kind of happy to have Dak a little ruffled, even if you consider this to be ruffled. Like, I mean ruffled in the like lightest possible sense, because you know what? The status quo wasn't working. And I think the world of Dak, as I know you do too. But remember it was Dak that was like involved in the drafting of Jalen Tolbert a year ago. Maybe not the best move. You know what I mean? We'll see, like kind of a TBD situation. And fine, I think Dak deserves to be involved in offensive game planning and scheme adjustments and all these things, right? He's the quarterback of your team. Like whether or not he's a franchise quarterback, your quarterback should be involved in those decisions. And Dak has certainly earned a place at that table. But that being said, I kind of like Mike McCarthy saying, you know what? Let's ruffle him a little bit. Let's like what's because people love, and I brought this up on the roundtable as well. People love Laurie, and I know you see this, to say like, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same results. And they bring that up when the thing that they're like criticizing is doing the same thing over and over again. But here go the Cowboys, changing the status quo. And people are like, what the hell are you doing? Things are going great. Like, why are you changing everything? And Mike McCarthy's kind of like, have you not seen the insanity quote? Like, I don't want to be that person. So I've thought about this a lot, and I kind of like the ruffling, I guess, is where I'm at.
I think he's separated between the ruffling and it's good, right? It's a challenge to Dak. And I think it's good that it's a challenge to Mike McCarthy. He is challenging himself and he's putting it on the line. He's putting it all on the line. But I think you separate the ruffling, which I think I agree, it needs to happen. Something needed to change there. I had thoughts about head coach. I know you had different thoughts about the head coach, but something needed to change because the status quo wasn't working. And Kellen Moore, I think, as amazingly gifted as he is as a football mind, play designer, his ability to marry different concepts up, his ability to marry different plays off similar looks, build wrinkles on wrinkles on wrinkles of what's working. I don't think it always matched up with someone that, had the foot down on the basically smashing B over and over and over again when it was working. Sometimes it felt like he got a little too varied. I think there's a difference between being a play designer and a play caller. You need to be both. Sometimes you're better at one than the other. Sometimes you're perfectly balanced. And what a lovely world it is to be in that. But something needs to change. Okay, I'm agreeing with you there. I think where some of the frustration and consternation from Cowboys fans and media observers comes from is that they shook things up to change it. And yet they did not bring in a particularly revolutionary voice to come in as offensive coordinator, even a non-play calling offensive coordinator. Brian Schottenheimer, who was in the building already, who has the ties. I mean, we've heard he's got the ties to McCarthy in his background. He's also got the ties to the Jones family. Jerry Jones making that all too clear when he was speaking in Indianapolis about the ties between the Jones family, Schottenheimer family, and throwing that word that starts, the nepotism words that get starting to throw around in those circles. But I think people would have liked to see a different voice from a different tree, a different coaching sphere, one that's perhaps on the up a little more. Some of the shine had come off Schottenheimer over his time Seattle, and since then, he was involved down there in the horror year in Jacksonville. That doesn't fill you up with a balloon full of hope. So I agree that something needed to change. I'm not totally convinced that they got the biggest injection of new ideas to facilitate that change and take it to the next level. But I also think that it is a good thing that we're getting this is coming to a head this year because of where Mike McCarthy's put himself. Because likely Dak's going to have more job security in the next couple of weeks. If this highly rumored and talked about restructure comes down, that
the
really does lock Dak
extension. That's
the overnight extension.
Word, right? Yeah.
Exactly. The extension comes in and Dak's future is more and more solidified in Dallas, as I think it should be. He's going to have, on paper, more job security going into this year. If this goes down on offense, and it does not, if this craters on offense, that falls on Mike McCarthy. Yes, there'll be criticism of Dak, but from a organizational contractual standpoint, he's going to be far more locked in. So I think it's good that we're finally coming to a head here, because quite often I think some of the criticism of the Cowboys is, this is a team that we know the Super Bowl drought, we know the lack of playoff success since 2006, basically since the Romo era began in proper. This is a team that's sixth in total regular season wins in the league. 6. They're the only team in the top 10 without a Super Bowl. The Super Bowl appearance, let alone a Super Bowl.
Do you remember I'm sorry, but I bring this up a lot, but the video, the Factory of Sadness Cleveland Browns fan video, do you remember that? Like, I think about that line a lot in life that he brings up. He's like shouting at the stadium. He says, do you realize that it is actually harder to be this consistently bad than it would be for you to sometimes accidentally occasionally be good. And to your point, like we talk so much about like, well, Mike McCarthy's now overseeing a team that's like getting multiple bites at the apple, right? Like they were a playoff team in back-to-back seasons. Mike McCarthy's doing that. But to your point, and to the like literal points, like, well, they're kind of there all the time, right? Like they're a team that wins all these games. It's just they find the most important moment to completely melt down.
And I think part of it is, a lot of talks like, hey, why are we talking about Mike McCarthy's job security when he's stacked 12-win seasons on top of each other? He's done things in back-to-back years that we haven't seen since the 90s. And that's a fair point, but that's not what he was brought in to do. He was brought in to take the next step. And every time I hear that, I just see that cheesy scene from American Pie where they cheers we call them a Slurpee. I think you call them a slushy drink or big gulp or something. They cheers them in like a circle. Now the next step, we won't talk about what they're actually talking about there, but yeah, I think he was brought in to take the next step. The next step hasn't happened, but
couldn't you argue that? Couldn't you argue that what you just said is the next step? Like sustain, like, and you can say that's sad, but you know what I mean, whatever. But like being a competitive team in like back-to-back years is, the next step. I mean, like I recognize what you're saying. The title game is the next literal step as far as like playoff sequence goes, but like they had never done that before.
Would you rather them be a competitive team every year or a top 4 contending team in a title game every second or third year?
Of course. I mean, like who's gonna like choose the other thing? But
that's what that was the job brief.
My point is, I think
come in and take the next step.
I think in some ways he has taken the next step. And I would also argue that he has taken the next step as far as individual accountability. So you're right. And I agree with you completely, obviously, that McCarthy's putting a lot on his own plate, and respect, right? Like, even if you don't like McCarthy, I think you have to respect that this dude is willing to kind of put his name, put his chips in and go down his way. And so that is a cool thing objectively. When did Jason Garrett ever do that? Point to the example. I mean, and I'm not trying to like throw Jason Garrett under the bus here, but like, when did he ever put himself out on a limb like that? And I respect it. And in some ways, that is the next step. Again, none of this is the NFC title game, so it's not that literal next step. But I do think that we're seeing like movements and measurements and accomplishments, and at least endeavored accomplishments from the head coach that we hadn't seen before. I think in some ways, the head coach right now is the most important person associated with the team. And that's not to say that Dak's influence isn't important, but by Mike McCarthy dismissing Kellen Moore, he is making this about him. Like, he is the most influential person associated with the team. And that should be the case because it's the NFL, but he's the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. So the fact that he's accomplished that, I think, is a next step in some, recognizable sense.
And I think we're floating around a kind of concept that I've talked about a couple of different times. And, the next step, Mike McCarthy coming in, actually stacking wins together, not the Cowboys never being able to sustain success over this last few decades, saying they can handle the spotlight and success, saying they're going to be better at it and failing to do so until these past couple of years with Mike McCarthy. But the idea is that because of their weird organizational and power structure, right? No team is structured like this. The GM has immunity from job security questions, at least real ones. Forget about the media who want Jerry to move on as general manager. That's a different setup. You've got your 2 most senior hands-on player personnel. Will McClay does an incredible job, but at the top of that organizational structure, when it comes to football players, Jerry Jones, a GM, and Stephen Jones, who do not have the football acumen. I'll say this: they don't have the football acumen of an Ozzie Newsome back in the day. I know he's moved into a different role with Baltimore, or John Schneider, or Brett Veach. They don't have that level of tape study, of being on the ground with schematics, with player personnel, with trends in the league. They don't have that hands-on. They have Will McClay, but at those top 2 spots, if you were measuring those 2 spots across the 32 teams in the NFL, the Cowboys are not going to rank very highly with those 2 in particular having the greatest football knowledge and acumen of present-day NFL players, schemes, coaches, whatever. That can put a ceiling on your operation. And I think that can be why that, yes, they have star players. Yes, they have seasons where it sparks up. But I think that's part of why this thing never seems to move in sustained motion in one direction. We have a chance, I guess, with all this coming to a head this year, with Mike McCarthy putting it all on line, with the immense amount of faith they have in Dan Quinn on the defense. We have a chance to see it moving in one direction this season. And hey, if I'm saying one direction that many times, you'd think I went to a One Direction concert the other night and not the Backstreet Boys, which I actually did go see on Sunday night. Hell of a show. Good fun from the boys. Yeah, Backstreet Boys this weekend in March, and then a couple of months it's Wu-Tang Clan and Nas. Slightly different vibes. Sure. Same stadium, perhaps slightly different energy from the crowd.
Definitely.
But there's a chance that this season we see it all pulling in one direction. And hey, if it goes poorly, then there's going to be a chance, whether it's Dan Quinn or somebody else, for this Cowboys team, that power structure to do their best to get aligned so it's not all pulling in different directions. Jerry, attention, stars. Steven, cap management, the pie. We can't go all in with a $45 million, $40 million, $45 million, $50 million cap hit on a quarterback, a coach who wants pushing and playing and coaching for their job security. Those aren't congruent. We have a chance over this season, if it goes well, to see that going in the right direction. And we'll see. Look, if it doesn't, then next season there's a chance for them to take a big picture. Look, we're taking that 30K view, the 30,000 feet view that you mentioned, to sit back and go, look, how many times do we have to do this with Jason, and Jason and Tony, with Jason and Dak, with Mike and Dak? We've got franchise quarterbacks. We're lucking into franchise quarterbacks here and there. We can't sustain. What do we need to change in our structure? So it's, look, next step, congruent triangles, Backstreet Boys. I really painted quite the picture there.
So fantastic job. If NSYNC, were around, you'd have to do it. Hit them both, obviously. Were you team NSYNC or team BSB? Like back in the day, but obviously.
I mean, look, I was like a 9-year-old boy, so I was team, Australian cricket team. But no, I definitely far more enjoyed Backstreet Boys. I mean, any guys, because obviously they were massive, for fandom amongst girls our age, it was unrivaled. It was through the roof. Guys, when they're 9, 10 years old, act cool. Like, no, I'm not into that. Any guys my age acting like they don't know a bunch of the Backstreet Boys jams, you're kidding yourself. It's okay. You're in your 30s now. Your prime years are behind you. Just enjoy the fact that you can get down to any number of hits. So no, definitely more Backstreet Boys than NSYNC, and I'm pretty disappointed in Justin Timberlake's Super Bowl performance a few years ago when he had a second crack at it, and it was like a kind of tame karaoke session.
Yeah, I agree. Not the best. Like, here's the thing. Like, we want to see you play the hits. You know what I mean? You got to get up there. We wanted to see some more like suit and tie, some mirrors. Like, that's what it had to be for JT. Actually, I had this debate. Like, it was a really spirited debate in college, and my friend like kind of like won it all when he said, "Look, NSYNC gave us JT." Like, that's kind of like the trump card. You know what I mean? Like, they gave us like the worldwide superstar. Like, so they kind of win in that sense. But that's an argument for a different day.
There's worldwide superstars everywhere. The 90s were a special time for boy bands and girl bands and those kind of, in that era of music.
I don't want to get too lost because I'm already forgetting my points. So I don't want to completely and totally forget it. You're right. To me, this season, obviously this upcoming season feels like the final season of a show, like a television show that's been kind of teetering for a little bit, right? And it's one of those like where they've announced, right? Farewell season, final season. We're going, we're fully and totally understanding that we're going to get resolution to these big plot holes that have been kind of open. So this is truly, Ted, Robin, Marshall, Lily, Barney at the wedding with everything happening, like all the time jumps, whatever. We obviously hope the plane lands in a much better fashion.
I was going to say,
no, not great. But anyway, so maybe Mike McCarthy will coach like the Cardinals in the future, and that'll be like the Hillary Duff How I Met Your Father like spinoff version of this. But anyway, that being said, I don't think we have to wait till the season to figure out if like the right direction. Like, I think the first like true fork in the road, the first true measurement of, okay, are you going to take this seriously, or is this just going to be more of the same? And we've kind of gotten a little bit of the latter with the like, oh, there's a big move coming. Where is it? You know what I mean? Like we've heard it. We've sang this song. We've danced this dance. We're all waiting to see. But what I was getting at, and I hate to root for something like this because it's just, you never want to root for people to lose their jobs. If they cut Zeke, I will buy in a little bit. If they cut Zeke, I will believe a little bit. I will say, you know what? Mike McCarthy won. Mike McCarthy truly won this, and he finally has things moving in a direction. I don't even want to call it the right direction, but a direction different than where this has been for the last 7 years.
What that would signify, because we know the affinity the Jones family, particularly Jerry, have for Ezekiel Elliott. You can see the production. You can point to health. You can say, oh, look, he's still valuable in goal line situations. He's a great blocker. He's probably a good blocker, better than more than a great blocker at this point. I mean, another player that has just given their entire physical body to the punishment that comes with that position, particularly the way that the style in which Ezekiel Elliott plays. But there's no tape and metrics and advanced metrics and counting stats that point you towards Zeke Elliott should be paid more than, I don't know, if you bring him back on $2 or $3 million, okay, is he going to take that? But giving him like $6 million and as a big sacrifice. He wouldn't fetch $6 million a season on the open
No,
market. I don't believe he would. He's
I
not
think
an effective and efficient player. He
I have
really
to
isn't. If you want, no,
I
go.
have to interrupt you to make a point because like it is relevant, and this was brought up on our roundtable as well this week. Do you realize, because I didn't until it was brought up by a commenter, that the franchise tag value for Tony Pollard is partly a result of Zeke's salary? Right? You know what I'm saying? Like it is partly
Hugely.
inflated to the degree that it is because of what Zeke is making. Like how has that
Mhm.
ever happened? Like maybe with tackles that have been tagged like on the same team, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But like that is actually hilarious that they are literally having to pay for the sins of the past with the tag value for Tony Pollard because of what Zeke is making on an annual per year or average per year perspective or basis or whatever you want to call it. So like, yeah, I mean, it to me, it would signify a waving of the white flag. The era is over. It's time to move on. And I would, I don't want to say I would applaud or I would respect, because again, like it would be unfortunate to see any player get cut. So like I'm not, ever advocating for that. But you get my point. I hope everybody does too. Right.
Appreciate.
It was a fun ride. It was a fun era. It began
Mm.
with you and I at the same place together, our friendship forming. But so, and obviously we would have won. We would have outlasted the era. So shout out to us. But I mean, it to me would suggest, and we've seen the usage decrease, right? For Zeke, we've seen the usage for Pollard increase. So like we have this day has been coming. So like I would kind of appreciate if the day of reckoning saw some reckoning, and it wasn't this like, oh, we fixed everything and like pulled the magic switch and everything's going to be good and hunky dory for another season. Like we're actually going to do the definition of insanity thing.
When it comes to the way this team is built, and honestly, the conversations we've had, the anxiety I mentioned about is that, adding offensive weapons there, giving touches, giving money, slices of the pie, giving touches, taking snaps away from Tony Pollard, all that contributes to that anxiety and an offense that gets trudging at times. The numbers, the counting stats are great, but there are points where it is super static, and there are points where the division of backfield touches felt inefficient and unexplosive and not taking care of what you could have. This is also a roster spot. This is a depth chart spot. There's certainly the Malik Davis fans out there, but what if a Gibbs, a Jahmyr Gibbs fell to you in the second round? What if you moved back into the second round, picked up some picks, and something was there? Look, I'm not saying drafting running backs early is great, but
you saved yourself. Respect. All right.
No. But you're talking about, like, we're talking about adding offensive explosion. We're talking about people that can help Dak Prescott, help that offense. You're talking about actually adding spark. And you're taking those opportunities away. Opportunity cost comes in a bunch of different ways: money, draft picks, snaps, depth chart, roster spots. You're taking those possibilities off the table. You want to bring Zeke back as your third running back on, $2 million a year in an Alfred Morris role. Okay. But anything up near, people saying, "Oh, I'd like to see him get cut down to about $6 million." I know the cap's moved on by then. That's what you offered DeMarco Murray after he set records in free agency. And this is I know it's been, 6, 7,
it's
however
been
many
almost a
years since
decade,
then.
but yeah,
but it's still looking at those numbers on paper. I'm like, how far have we come and how far have we stalled if that's what the approach is to the big cut from an incredibly inefficient player, a tough player, a physical player, and on the field, a selfless player. In terms of the blocking, giving himself up, and the collisions that he's taken on, but a player that every bit of evidence tells us has cratered in terms of efficiency and effectiveness.
I mean, I think that's fair. I don't know. Like, you can argue he has a valuable presence in the locker room. He's a valued leader, et cetera, et cetera. And you can argue that he's good friends with the franchise quarterback. But again, I kind of go back to the let's ruffle. You know what I mean? Like I'm kind of, like you got to shake. Something has to change, and I'm not saying everything has to change. Be wild, be crazy, whatever. But like, so you cannot just do this. And I also think, and I don't think you can do it. You have to do it for this reason alone. But like, if you bring Zeke back to whatever degree, nobody takes you seriously. Nobody does. And maybe you don't care. Like, and to some degree, I respect not caring. To some degree, I respect, hey, live your life, do what you want to do, rock on. But nobody takes you seriously if you bring Zeke back. And I mean, it wouldn't make sense. Why would you bring Zeke back when you just placed the franchise tag on Tony Pollard, suggesting that you cannot live without Tony Pollard? So that's what I'm saying. I will be impressed. And I guess to close, because by this time next week, Thursday of next week, Zeke might be cut. So give me 2 predictions. They can be as bold, as chill, as whatever it is you want, Laurie Horesh. But by Thursday, March the 16th in the States, 2 things that you guarantee will have happened associated with the Dallas Cowboys.
Oof. Okay. Big ones. Okay.
It'll be the
By
second
this
day
time,
of the new league year. So,
second day of the new league year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The Cowboys will add a wide receiver. It will be via trade. And that wide receiver has recently been working out in the area with a former number 88. The Cowboys will trade for. Yes, go on. I'm slow, but
you're saying the Cowboys trade for DeAndre Hopkins?
The Cowboys trade for DeAndre Hopkins. Let's get bold. Let's get weird. Why not? I mean, look, this is money that you can work out. There's certainly you're hearing reports that there's flexibility with how he work on the back end of the contract.
You're creating some salary cap space with Tyron to that point. Like, what do you need the space for? You know what I mean? Like,
exactly. Well, and that's the thing. Okay. Do we? They're making space. Are you actually going to use it this time? They made space for getting rid of Dez. They didn't use it. They've made space for getting rid of all sorts of things. Okay, so yes, so they trade for DeAndre Hopkins. There's one.
Okay,
and the Dak Prescott extension has landed by then as well.
Okay, so you think that is probably the safer one of the two?
Yeah, I think so.
Like, there's no sense. I really do think that they learned their lesson. That like waiting only made it worse for them, and they had to pay more money. And I think that's the driving force. It's not that it helps the team, but that they don't want to pay more money. They have to the Daniel Jones thing. We laughed already, like, haha, he's making the same amount of money as Dak. Well, that Dak's aware of that, and so like Dak's going to be aware of that when it comes time to these extension talks. And if you want to talk about this, like Jalen Hurts could get his extension this offseason. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, get it done before those deals
Lamar
come
Jackson's
into place.
deal.
Yeah, like whatever that winds up being, like, but before the new APY in town rises or lands, get it done. You know what I mean? Don't be the first. Don't be the fourth of these particular players. Okay, so you're saying by Thursday, I want to put a time on it. So at the absolute latest, by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, Cowboys time, on Thursday, March 16th, Dak has a new deal, and DeAndre Hopkins is his teammate.
Yeah, I mean, yes, done. I mean, poor DeAndre Hopkins. Where's he played? Houston Texans, not exactly a hyped-up franchise, and the Arizona Cardinals during a pretty lackluster time. This guy he's not the best wide receiver in the league anymore, but there's plenty left in his tank. Recently his 2022 tape. And this is a player that you think he might be able to thrive under the spotlight of the star, maybe. You think he might be built for that just a little bit?
Well, and CeeDee Lamb has said before he was a big fan of DeAndre Hopkins, as a young
Dez
lad.
Is out there recruiting everybody.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I would be, and here's the thing, like, we are so lame. I'll say that about you and I, that like, if this happens, if DeAndre Hopkins is a Cowboy, we're immediately in like, watch out. Like, we are so, the bar is so low that if you do this, we're like, that's it. Boom. Lock it up, baby. Let's go draft. And would you say, I think I know the answer, but second round pick for DeAndre? Straight up?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what it'll cost, but I would.
Take it.
Yeah, I would.
Take it. And then go nowhere near the tight end position in the first round, and I'm happy. So, I mean, we're good to go.
Absolutely. You can move around in the draft, especially when you've got extra ancillary picks later, on what are we expecting? Maybe day 3 that the 3 comp picks would come in. Maybe a 4-5-5 situation. That does give you some mobility to move up if you want to move up in the third. If you want to make a leap from the third up into the second, if you do give something away, there's movements to be made there. You got plenty of draft capital to work around, and that's the efficiency. There's an inefficiency, and to be taken advantage of with drafting for still talented veterans. The Cowboys were the example of that going the wrong way. You hope that just like that, they learn their lesson.
Okay, Laurie, let's get out of here. Last thing, we talked about full swing. We talked about Drive to Survive. Give us, I ask people this a lot. So this is the least unique thing I'm doing with you. What is something you recommend to everybody to watch? It can be on Netflix. It can be on, it won't be on one platform. I'll leave that to be nameless for reasons you and I discussed.
Oh, no, I can hype up that everybody should go watch Mandalorian on Disney Plus. Absolutely. I'm a Disney employee, ESPN Disney. Let's do, go watch Mandalorian. No, honestly, if I'm going across the board, things that I've loved watching, there's a show I just watched, Bad Sisters. That's an Irish one. And Sharon Horgan's involved in that. It's like a group of sisters, and there's a brother-in-law that married to one of the sisters that they're not.
Is this on Apple TV?
Yeah, that's a hell of a show.
Okay.
And a throwback one. I'm Australian and I'm playing back into Australia's roots back in Britain here. Show called Friday Night Dinner, which is classic British, right? Like 6, 7, 8 episodes a season, but there were like 6 seasons of it. Family comedy, kind of like The In-Betweeners, but grown up a little bit. A little less gross, a little more, but that kind of sibling cringe family. It's shaped around a very non-religious Jewish family's Shabbat dinners, and just tons of mum guilt, tons of weird dad humor, and 2 siblings, one of whom actually was in between his Friday night dinner. Those are in the rotation right now. But RJ, you know what season it is. You know what we're gearing up for. It's golf season, man. Like, just hook it up to the veins. We got the players. We got the Masters.
I didn't want to press
it's all happening.
The issue. Tough week for Australians. Obviously, not able to defend their players' title. Who wins the players? My actual last question, and I guess a sub question.
Jason Day. That's done, right? I'm not actually sure that he's actually in the field actually this week. I need to check that.
He is. He's playing well. It's possible.
Yeah, he's playing well. He's come back. Hell of a comeback.
You picking Rory, your guy? Who's one of the players, and does it count since Cam Smith is not defending his title?
It only counts if an Australian wins it, and so Jason Day.
Fair. Okay.
Yep, that's right. No, man, I'm loving it at the moment. I would love to see Jordan Spieth win it, and I'm not just pandering to the demographic here, knowing where he's from. I love a tragic genius, and there is a tragic genius to the way that he plays the game. He's so capable and so smart.
Some people say that you and I are Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas. Like that's what our relationship is like. So if that were the case, I was about to ask you who's who between you and I. I think you're the tragic. I don't have like a depth. Like I don't have the depth that Jordan does. Like I'm pretty shallow. So like I think I'm Justin Thomas.
Yeah. I would never say you're shallow. You're the sweetest man I know. But I would say, yeah, look, in terms of like tragic genius prone to a blow up, some internal melodrama, I think I could get my wife to sign off on that comparison. The genius I'll take. She might not sign off on that, but the tragic melodrama, that's so really cool.
You're Jordan Spieth. I'm Justin Thomas. You're picking Jordan Spieth to win the players. I'm not picking myself, I guess. I'm not picking Justin Thomas. I'm picking Jon Rahm. Whoa, big shot going out on a ledge here. But right before we started recording this, I saw, I think it was Golf Channel's Instagram posted a video of Trevor Lawrence meeting Jon Rahm, and it was really cool. I should put it on my Instagram story, so you go watch it, Laurie. But Trevor was kind of like intimidated, and it was kind of cool. Like
Jon Rahm,
I know, but like Trevor, like John seemed like really kind of annoyed. Like at Trevor, like, what are you doing here, Trevor? You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, hey, John, like this is kind of a big deal, dude. You know what I mean? Like, and Trevor was like, we're so pumped to watch you, and like he was like, it was like a true fan and professional experience. Like seriously, go watch it and let me know what you think.
That's one of my big claims this past season that I was nauseatingly repetitive about. That's top 6 quarterback in the NFL, Trevor Lawrence. That's his full name.
That's also a friend of Blogging the Boys, Trevor Lawrence, former guest here at BTB. So like you and Trevor Lawrence now in the same boat. But even though he big time Trevor Lawrence, I'm picking Jon Rahm. Laurie Horesh.
That's right.
You're the best. And I hope that you have something incredible for dinner. So I hope.
Well, dinner's far away. I'm getting there, but you're the best, RJ. Thank you for having me on. RJ, if anybody's wondering if you're this sweet off the camera, he's even nicer. He's the best man.
That's not true.
He is.
That's not true.
Thank you for having me on, RJ.
Laurie, have a wonderful day.